A time jump in a film can really go in any direction. Think of the amount of times you see something happening and then suddenly you get 3 weeks earlier. Well, that can happen in any number of different ways. To make it work, it's got to suit the scene, and sometimes it's got to completely take you by surprise. With that in mind, I'm Sean Ferrick for What Culture Horror, and here are the 10 most unexpected time jumps in horror movies. Number 10, Missing in the Tall Grass. Based on a novella written by Stephen King and his son Joe Hill, an author in his own right, In the Tall Grass follows Becky, a pregnant woman, and her brother Cal as they get lured into a field by a mysterious presence and must fight for survival. The grass plays several wicked tricks on its victims, including playing around with their perception of distance and, as it transpires, time. Becky and Cal are hiding out of the grass when they hear the voice of Travis, the father of Becky's unborn child. When they find him, they're relieved to see a familiar face, but that relief turns to terror when he informs them that they've been missing for 2 months. Not only are Becky and Cal in shock, but the audience is too, as there had been no previous indication that so much time had passed since the protagonists first got lost. The moral of the story? Never underestimate what appears to be just a humble plant. Number 9. The Boat Arrives, Triangle. Released in 2009, Triangle stars Melissa George as Jess, a woman whose plans to go on a relaxing boating trip backfire massively. After their first vessel sinks, Jess and the rest of the survivors end up aboard an abandoned cruise ship. Well, at least they think it's abandoned. It turns out the ship is stuck in a time loop, which Jess and her friends must figure out how to escape. They learn this by spotting a second version of themselves climb aboard the liner, sending this whole horrifying ordeal right back to the very start. While viewers will definitely know something is up with the haunted boat, there's nothing to suggest that time travel is at play until it actually happens on screen. The movie eventually reaches its satisfying climax when Jess washes ashore near her home, only to return there and find that she is back to the start of the day she went out to sea in the first place. Number 8. Through the Wormhole, Devil's Pass. The Dyatlov Pass incident refers to the unexplained deaths of 9 hikers in the Russian Ural Mountains in 1959. Figuring enough time had passed, by 2013, Rennie Harlan made a film about this real-life tragedy. Also known as the Dyatlov Pass incident, Devil's Pass is a found-footage picture detailing a group of modern-day explorers investigating the initial deaths. Are the answers what they expect? Well, this is a horror movie, so what do you think? After asking some questions, the group discovered that 11 bodies were found at the site, not 9. Already suspicious, this sends them further over the edge and they travel out to the pass to discover the truth. Once there, they find a secret military bunker located near the passage, seemingly devoted to studying teleportation and human mutation. Whilst being chased through the facility by a gang of angry mutants, the 2 remaining group members, Jensen and Holly, end up jumping through a wormhole and travelling back to 1959. Theirs were the 2 extra bodies found at the site. This is definitely a fantastic twist, which is a shame, as the rest of Devil's Pass isn't that great. Number 7, Not As It Seems, Pandorum. You could argue that what happens at the end of sci-fi horror Pandorum doesn't count as a time jump, but in the context of the movie, it makes perfect sense why this can be included here. A ship carrying the last remnants of the human race is travelling through space, hoping to establish a new home on a distant planet. While the civilians are in stasis, crew members emerge from deep sleep every 2 years to maintain the craft, which is where our story begins. Pandorum gets very confusing very quickly, as none of the crew can be considered reliable narrators. The title of the film refers to a space-induced sickness that causes sufferers to hallucinate, leading to all sorts of mishaps as the crew attempt to battle an army of mutants that have evolved aboard the ship. As things reach a crescendo, it's revealed that the ship has already landed on the new planet. Furthermore, it's already been there 800 years, despite everyone on board believing they were still travelling. So yeah, the time jump only occurs from the perception of the characters, but perception is what this movie is all about. Number 6. Max and Julia's Deaths, Cube 2 Hypercube. Cube 2 Hypercube, which is one of the best sequel names of all time, picked up right where the original left off. A new set of captives find themselves in a much worse predicament, as this prison does not obey the laws of gravity, physics, or, you guessed it, time. As well as showing the group visions of their future, the Hypercube demonstrates its power when it claims the lives of Max and Julia. The pair end up developing feelings for each other and start to, shall we say, circle the square when the gravity in their room goes off. Then, time itself begins to unravel, rapidly aging the embraced duo until they waste away into nothing. Number 5. Frankenstein in the future, Frankenstein Unbound. Frankenstein Unbound from 1990 is a weird film. To date, it's the final piece of work by legendary director Roger Corman, known for his low-budget horrors. It also features a bizarre cast list, including John Hurt, Raul Julia, Bridget Fonda, and In Excess lead singer Michael Hutchence. And if you thought that was odd, just wait till you hear the plot. As you might expect, this is a retelling of the classic Mary Shelley story with a slight twist. The regular cast of characters is joined by Dr. Buchanan, played by John Hurt, a scientist from the future sent back to the 19th century after an experiment gone wrong. This journey through time is somewhat expected, as it happens toward the beginning of the film, but what happens at the end of the movie is completely out of left field. After another of Buchanan's tests goes screwy, he, Dr. Frankenstein, the monster, and his bride are all sent into the future, far beyond Buchanan's original time. They find themselves on a desolate mountain with no idea how to get home. If that isn't the maddest ending to a Frankenstein remake you've ever heard, you're kinda lying to yourself now. Number 4. Completing the Loop, The House at the End of Time. Originally titled La Casa del Fin de los Tiempos, this Venezuelan picture is the highest-grossing horror film in the country's history, as well as being the most internationally distributed Venezuelan film of any genre. The House at the End of Time stars Rudy Rodriguez as Dulce, a woman convicted of murder when an unseen force living in her home kills her husband and abducts her young son. After 30 years in jail, Dulce returns to that very same house to try and figure out what happened. After an extremely convoluted sequence of events, it's revealed that the house has the ability to transport its occupants randomly through time, which the older Dulce finds out when she is sent back in time to the initial incident. She later discovers that it was her future self who murdered her husband and took her son, which she must now do again in order to keep the timeline straight. Basically, The House at the End of Time is a very good time travel horror, but don't watch it if you're at risk of headaches. Number 3. Becoming Sarah Fear, Fear Street Part 2, 1978. Christmas came in the summer of 2021 for horror fans when Netflix released a trilogy of films based on R.L. Stine's Fear Street within the space of about 3 weeks. Set in 1994, 1978, and 1666 respectively, the movies were based in the town of Shadyside, which was supposedly afflicted by an old witch's curse. But as the plucky heroes of the movie find out, this isn't exactly the truth. At the end of part 2, protagonist Dina believes she's about to finally end the curse by reuniting the hand of Sarah Fear, the Shadyside witch, with the rest of her body. Only there's just one problem. Dina accidentally bled on the hand, forever linking her with the supposed sorceress. This manifests when Dina experiences visions of Sarah's life after the hand is reunited. Then she finds herself inhabiting Sarah's body as her mind has been sent back in time to the year 1666. A neat little swerve that fits with the narrative and helps pave the way for the next installment. You've really gotta hand it to Fear Street Part 2? I'm so sorry. Number 2, Rewind Funny Games. Whichever version of Funny Games you go for, be it the original 1997 Austrian release or the 2007 American remake, it contains one of the most bonkers pieces of time manipulation you'll ever see in a movie. Both stories involve an unsuspecting family who are kidnapped and terrorized in their own home by 2 sadistic criminals named Paul and Peter in both films. After the alliterative villains murdered their son, the couple resolve to make them pay, which the mother does by murdering Peter with a shotgun, and that's when things get wacky. Paul, not best pleased with having his partner blown to bits in front of him, grabs a nearby TV remote and presses the rewind button. This reverses time within the movie itself until it reaches the point just before Peter is killed. The mother is disarmed, and both baddies live to fight another day. At no point before this was Funny Games anything other than straightly told realism. This bizarre break in continuity might sound like it would take you out of the action, but in a weird way, it totally works. Number 1, back to the Middle Ages, Evil Dead 2. What better way to end this list than with one of the maddest time jumps in not just horror history, but cinema in general. After attaching a chainsaw to his hand and deciding he's had enough of these damn deadites, Ash Williams and his accomplice Annie Noby resolve to banish the evil monsters once and for all by reading a section of the Necronomicon. Even though Annie dies in the ensuing scuffle, the spell works, opening up a portal that sucks the creatures through it. Unfortunately for Ash, he and his trusty Oldsmobile are also pulled in. Does Ash end up in an alternate dimension? Does he arrive in hell and have to fight off more deadites? Nope, he ends up in the Middle Ages. Because sure, why not? Turns out that the portal was to the distant past, and Ash has rocked up in the time of Arthurian legend, where his advanced weaponry alerts the attention of a nearby group of knights. The final shot of Evil Dead 2 is Ash screaming in frustration, setting up the next film in the series, Army of Darkness. Alright, hands up who saw that one coming.